Hello and welcome to Polaris Sendias. We support children, young people and their parent carers in Hampshire, the Isle of Wight and the London boroughs of Richmond and Kingston. I'm going to talk to you about secondary school transition process for children and young people on SEN Support. We will look at the activities, responsibilities and what you can do to help ensure your young person has a smooth transition into secondary school. So first, let's check your understanding of SEN Support so you're clear about what it means for your young person. So first of all, a child has special educational needs, or SEN, if he or she has a learning difficulty or disability which calls for special education provision to be made for him or her. Where a pupil is identified as having SEN, schools should take action to remove barriers to learning and put effective special educational provision in place. This special educational provision is support that is additional to or different from what's typically provided for other children of the same age who do not have special educational needs. And a very important thing here is that a child does not need a diagnosis to receive SEN support. So in summary, if ordinarily available provision isn't enough to overcome the barriers to learning, a child has special educational needs or SEN. So now that we've got a good understanding of SEN Support and whether your child qualifies for SEN Support or currently is on SEN Support at primary school, let's have a look at the transition timetable. So this slide gives you an overview of the transition timetable. This video focuses on the activities between the National Offer Day for all Year 6 pupils and starting secondary school in September. So the activity starts in the spring term with welcome information being sent out to families and admission paperwork being completed. The bulk of the activity happens in the summer term. This is when transition managers from the new school will visit primary schools and start to gather information about the children coming to their school. There are also transition or induction days where your young person will get to spend more time in their new school. This normally happens towards the back end of the summer term. There may also be additional opportunities for your young person to visit during this time. Some schools may also offer summer schools. These are often for children with EHCPs, but could be opened up to other children depending on the circumstances, and normally consist of additional transition days actually during the summer holidays. Then in September, the process completes. So the timetable may vary across different schools, but generally it will follow this pattern. But it's worth checking your new school's website to see if they've published their transition journey so that you can understand what opportunities there are for your child to settle in and commence their transition journey with the new school. So once you have your school place confirmed, the transition activity between the existing school and the new school will begin. So the SEN Code of Practice sets out the actions that mainstream schools should take to meet their duties in relation to identifying and supporting children with SEN. And this does include planning and preparation for the transitions between phases of education. And included within this is the move from primary to secondary. So if your child is on SEN Support at primary school, your child's assessed needs and interventions being used to support your child should already be documented in a SEN Support plan, or maybe an IEP, individual education plan, or it might be called something different, but that information should already be captured somewhere. And schools have a duty to share that information in order to help plan and prepare for the transition to secondary school. So transition planning should achieve three main outcomes. The first is that the new school needs to get to know your young person and understand what support they have now. And this is represented in that first block on the slide, so where the primary school shares information with the secondary school. And that may be done through meetings with the designated transition manager, sharing of the SEN support plan or the IEP, looking at what reasonable adjustments are already in place, and maybe also looking at access arrangements. And it's making sure or knowing that the primary school has a duty to share that information with the secondary school, and that you can get involved in that process if you wish to. So it's good to understand what might be happening in the background and what you can ask to be part of. The second part is around your young person needing to get to know their new school and feeling settled. So that middle block on the slide are the activities that might take place to support that. So in addition to the normal transition visits, there might be some additional or personalised transition visits, which might be more appropriate for your young person. You could use things like social stories or photo books so that your young person gets to know people in the new school, gets to know the layout of the school, gets to understand what's going to be happening in the transition to the new setting. You might want to create more opportunities to meet key staff members. So perhaps if they might be connecting more with the pastoral team or other members of staff like their tutor or their head of house, head of year, you could create those opportunities for them to meet them. And then some schools offer the summer school over the summer, so a few days of extra transition activity, giving children maybe more of a chance to feel more settled with their surroundings. Often only available for children on EHCPs, but lots of schools opening up to other children as well, so it's always worth asking. Then the last phase there is around the new school needing to plan what support the young person will need when they actually start secondary school. And that's taking all the information that they've had from primary school, the information around the young person and understanding their needs and thinking about how they could adapt the SEN Support plan. What will it look like in the secondary school? Will they be creating a SEN profile or a pupil passport, it's sometimes called, and how will that be shared across the staff members? Are there new or different reasonable adjustments that might need to be considered as the settings changed or will be changing? And will there be some additional support that's needed in those first few weeks to help them settle in, maybe a buddy scheme or extra check-ins from a tutor? So part of the transition planning process is thinking about what reasonable adjustments may be needed in the new secondary school. Examples of reasonable adjustments are things like movement breaks, timeout cards, maybe different start and finish times. So something your child or young person may already be receiving in primary school. Before asking for reasonable adjustments in the new setting, it's worth understanding what the law is and your rights around requesting reasonable adjustments. So you can only request reasonable adjustments by law if you're considered disabled under the Equality Act. And the definition of disabled under the Equality Act is if you have a physical or mental impairment that has a substantial and long-term negative effect on your ability to do normal daily activities. So many children with SEN will fall under this definition. Schools must make reasonable adjustments to ensure that disabled pupils are not put at a substantial disadvantage compared to their peers. So your young person's school may already be making reasonable adjustments in addition to SEN Support, and you might want to start considering what reasonable adjustments may be required in the new school. So to help you think about what reasonable adjustments may be needed in the new setting, there's some common areas that we've highlighted in this video for you to think about. So the first area is uniform. So your young person may have sensory issues or difficulties with dressing, and there are a number of uniform adaptations that schools can normally consider. Another area might be homework. Your young person may refuse to do homework or struggle with the volume of homework. Some schools have homework clubs geared towards children who need extra support. Other schools may be able to reduce homework or remove it completely from the first year. Transition between lessons is another area, like getting lost or perhaps being overwhelmed by the busy corridors at class change over time. That could be an issue for your young person. So schools can provide things like corridor passes or maybe consider other ways that they could help. Lunch canteens can be another area of overwhelm. Queue passes or separate areas to eat may be things that could help your young person. Forgetting or losing equipment is another common problem at secondary school. There's normally a very long list of equipment that your young person has to remember to bring with them each day. If teachers are aware that forgetting things is linked to their SEN, allowances could be made, or they could, come up with ways to help your young person in school. And then the last area would be detentions and sanctions. So understanding the behaviour policy is always useful for this one, and thinking about what adaptations might need to be made within that school behaviour policy and how this could potentially be reflected in a behaviour plan if you think that might be an area of challenge for your young person. There may be other just simpler things that need to be considered, like reminding your young person to go to an after school sanction to make sure that they don't forget to attend, things like that. Here are some suggested points of contact at secondary school to help you with your transition conversations, both now and when your young person starts school. The first is identify transition managers, and those are the people that could be really good key contacts for the actual transition period. And you'd probably need to speak to your primary school to understand who those transition managers are. Then other contacts could be the tutor. They're often a good daily touch point for your young person. And sometimes that tutor might stay with your young person throughout their whole time at secondary school. It depends how the school works and if they move tutor groups each year. Another point of contact would be the head of year. Learning support may be another point, depending on your child's needs, and in addition, pastoral support as well. And then finally, the SENCO, as the SENCO does have responsibility for the coordination of provision for all children with SEN. I'm just going to finish off with some practical tips for home and ways that you can help your young person through the transition period. I've talked already about social stories, but that is a good thing you could develop at home with your young person to help talk them through the change and talk them through what the new setting is going to be like, maybe what the school day is like, and including pictures of some of the people they'll be in contact with at the new school. Another area is the actual route to school and rehearsing the travel route, whether that's doing drives past the school to understand where the pick up and drop off points are, or helping rehearse the bus route if your child's going to be getting public transport. Another thing could be just spending time looking at the school map, trying to understand where everything is. Another good thing to do is creating a checklist of equipment that your child will need each day, and possibly using this each evening to help your child get a bit more independent around making sure that they've got everything that they need and understanding what they need to be packing in their bag. You could also be practicing wearing the uniform and the PE kit before they start. This will be a good way to understand if there's any sensory issues or any difficulties with the uniform, so that you can address those reasonable adjustments, in advance. Also thinking about what questions your young person might have, encourage them to write them down, encourage them to, ask members of staff at transition visits, uh, induction days, but also, you can help them ask those questions by emailing the school if you need to. And then there's lots of fantastic resources out there that you can use that can help you with the transition. And an example on here is a booklet called My Moving Up to Secondary School, Mentally Healthy Schools. But there's lots more resources available on our website that we signpost people to. So I hope this video has been useful, but if you would like more information or advice, please visit the website for your area or contact us using the email address or telephone number also published for your area. Thank you for listening.